can start in the middle. Settle our minds down here. And just check in with your body sitting here. Try to be aware if you're carrying any of the tensions from the day. And allow your breath to release them. Knowing that you don't have any other place to be. And see if you can soften the areas around your eyes, your mouth, your jaw. And soften your neck and your shoulders. Allowing a sense of relaxation to descend through your body. Not one of fatigue, but relaxed alertness. And once you've taken care of the body, and take care of the mind by placing your attention on that sensation of the breath going in and out of the body, allowing the mind to settle down. Using the breath to anchor the mind from the stories about the past, the planning for later. Now, remembering the reason that you decided to come tonight, generate a positive intention to use your time well. And combine that with the wish that it be of benefit, not just for yourself, but that it will ripple out to benefit others. And when you're ready, see if you can find a gold prayer book and turn to page 98. No, is that right? Is it 98?
What?
Refuge. Yes. Huh, it's a mirror. So just to give us a taste, since we're taking refuge, this is the standard refuge prayer when you're at a teaching. So it's slightly different than the one we use when we're practicing at home. This is too loud.
It was better when it was louder.
It was better when it was louder.
I think so.
Everybody and their preferences.
Uh-huh.
He's in charge
For
though, because
broadcast.
he's recording.
Broadcast purposes.
Live from Tupton, Bungasoo. Okay, so refuge. So you don't have to recite this if you're not comfortable with it, but just to let you know what it looks like. So for those of you who've taken refuge, by all means, join in. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, and become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay. So refuge. Anybody do any thinking about it this week? And what did you think? Share. Yes, Ralph.
So I became more committed to practice as a result of painful experience in my life, and over time that has started to dissipate. And my MO then is to I think I'll skip that and not do this.
Right. Welcome to samsara.
Right. But what's interesting is when I used to do refuge prayer while in pain, it was really like seeking refuge, like shelter from the storm kind of
Yeah.
thing. But now that's starting to change in that taking refuge now is really about dedication to practice.
Yeah, and this is how, it's so important to make that transition, because when we start feeling better, we really let things go. Well, I don't need protection. I'm fine. The trouble with that is we're not fine. We still have all our disturbing emotions. We're still operating from a place of self-centeredness, so we'll see suffering again. So the point of the Dharma isn't to put Band-Aids on our suffering. The point of the Dharma is to create the cause not to suffer. So we need to take advantage when we're going through good periods, because that's, the easy time to do it. It's like, because we're not being distracted by whatever event that has, maybe brought us to the teachings in the first place. So it's being able to develop a a sort of consistent, steady practice that is there, no matter what's happening in your life, is very important. You know, over the long term, that's how you make, more lasting progress. So you don't fall back on your old behaviors just because you're not in crisis. You know? So most people, I think, come to spiritual paths either because they were just raised that way, or because they hit a crisis in their life and they're looking for some way to heal, or to cope. So there's nothing wrong with that being the starting point. It's just that we need to recognize that if we slack off when things have evened out a little, we'll have to start again when we're back in crisis. It's not, it's just like going to the gym, which I haven't done in a year, and I'm dreading going back to the gym. It's like, why do I do this to myself? I know how miserable it's going to be. Well, fortunately, Dharma practice isn't necessarily miserable, but it's hard. It's effort. You have to look at yourself and honestly assess where you are and kind of go, ooh, that's not very nice of me, to think that way, and then try to counter it, So and if you haven't practiced, if you let your practice kind of go, or just becomes routine, like you just, you say refuge because you have a commitment to say refuge 3 times in the morning and 3 times at night, so you just say them because so you, like on the way to, your car, you're saying them, that's mindful. I bet not. So, but this is what we do. It's just that it's a mistake. It is really, common to do that. It's just it's one of the reasons we're still stuck in samsara. Is that we just reach for support when we're in crisis. And we need to be able to bridge between crises so that so we have more, so we have transformed our minds a bit in the interim. So also, our practice looks a little differently when we're not in crisis. So it's learning how do I correct my negative states of mind just day to day. Those ordinary ways in which we act out or act from self-interest. So it's really good when you can recognize when you're starting to kind of, lose that energy and try to reinvigorate it by looking at it in a different way. So that it's, I've been doing it for 20 years. It's, you have to keep, and this is the point of refuge. This is what's interesting. Really reminding yourselves of the good qualities of, enlightened beings, the good qualities of the teachings. That, when we read them, we go, yeah, that sounds good. I'd like to be like that. And then the community of practice recognize, that gee, I act better when I'm around, people who aren't trashing the world or something. So it's. All of that stuff, we need to keep reminding ourselves of these good qualities so that, what does that lead to? It leads to that aspiration. Ooh, I want to have that. That aspiration, I want to have that, leads to practice. We can't have that just by wishing. We have to do something. So, this process of reminding ourselves, that's why it's they give us all these lists of good qualities and stuff, and that's a good starting point. But this is why when you're reading Dharma and you run across a sentence, you go, yes, I really want to come from that kind of place. It's helpful to write it down and make that part of your refuge, to kind of, to help boost your aspiration. Because we get so easily distracted by what's going on in our, chores, our worldly concerns, and we get hooked by them through our self-centeredness or self-interest, and then, we lose, and we forget. So the more we can infuse our routine with meaningful reminders of why you're drawn to these teachings, it helps keep the quality of your effort to be a little more sincere, more genuine, and that's going to have better results. It's not, and of course, we're not going to do it every day. It's not going to happen every day, but we're going to, it's just a matter of, if you don't try to do that, you can lose that aspiration altogether. They call it, some traditions, like, they speak a lot about keeping that beginner's mind, where you're so enthusiastic and and you share it with all your friends, and they all hate you for it, all that stuff, that passes. That's temporary. That's like infatuation. So we have to keep that, we have to feed that mind that appreciates the qualities that draw us to this teaching, and it's not like the work we do, well, I mean, maybe it is. It's not like our chores, particularly. It's not like, there's a lot of stuff we just have to do, right, to survive in the world and all that kind of stuff, But then there are other things that we do because we want something extra, like we take special courses in order to be able to do a new thing with our job or our career because, it'll be more interesting to us, or maybe it pays better or something, there's some reason why we want to do that. We just need to keep reminding ourselves that we're attracted to these teachings because we want to be happier, kinder, and that's important to us, because we can really lose that, where it just becomes, we just sort of forget about it until some crisis arrives, and then we go, oh no, where's my community? So, not a good idea. Okay. And now the boring slides. Just the facts, man. I was just talking about how one of the reasons we really emphasize lineage in trying to stay faithful to the words of the Buddha, one of the qualities of a Buddha is that they say that a Buddha can answer, like everybody's question in a room, the same answer, because everybody will hear a different answer, that they will understand it differently, So we don't want to put our spin on the teachings. We want you to hear the Buddha's words, So it's not about, being a creative, entertaining instructor. It's about making sure you hear what the Buddha said, And then, whatever you hear is going to be due to your karma, your wisdom, how you interpret it. So it's, it's really important to trust that you're hearing, the, authentic teachings, not just someone's version. Now we need, fortunately we have scholars and practitioners from the past who really, I don't even know what's on the screen.
Some blue screen.
Okay, so the fact, my
You're not
empty
plugged in.
exercise log, I know. I just wanted to make sure I was, somewhere where I wanted to be. And I have to find that page. So.
There you go.
So last week we kind of went through the good qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So we're going to continue that. But in fact, I'm going to go back and go over some other qualities of the Buddha. So, okay. So we talk about, in terms of like 4 bodies of a Buddha, you may have heard me refer to things like the enjoyment body of a Buddha, which is the form the Buddha takes, like white Tara over there is in silks, and sometimes they're dressed like ordained people. Okay, that's an emanation body. That's the kind of body that ordinary beings can see, like Shakyamuni Buddha. Sometimes they're in beautified ways. They have lots of jewels and they have silky robes and all that stuff. That's the enjoyment body that bodhisattvas, high-level bodhisattvas, can see and receive teachings from them. So these reflect when a being becomes enlightened, immediately or simultaneously, I guess is the way to put it. Simultaneously, the Pure Land of that Buddha manifests. So that those people who created the cause to receive teachings from that being in that Pure Land, there it is. All emanations of that being, because you can emanate as bodhisattvas, become enlightened emanations, all at the same time. This is not a process of, this happens first and then this happens. It all happens all at once. And there's a reason for that, and we'll get to that. But when they talk about the 4 bodies of the Buddha, they're talking about the nature truth body, the wisdom truth body, the enjoyment body, and the emanation body. Or the Svabhava Kaya, which you never hear. I mean, no one ever uses this particular body. So everybody has to look it up because nobody can remember.
How do you pronounce it again?
Svabhava Kaya. Kaya means body. Dharmakaya, you hear a lot. And often Dharmakaya refers to both of these. So the Svabhava Kaya is the nature truth body, which is the emptiness of the mind of the Buddha. It's the clear light nature of the mind. Dharmakaya is the wisdom truth body, and that's the omniscient mind of the Buddha. That's the mind that is free completely of any negative or incorrect states of mind, that it's nothing but wisdom truth. Sambhogakaya is one of the form bodies of a Buddha. That's the enjoyment body. That's one that high-level bodhisattvas or Arya bodhisattvas can see. And then there's the Nirmanakaya, which is just the emanation body of a Buddha, which Shakyamuni Buddha was called an example of a super emanation body. A super emanation body is one that can show the deeds of a Buddha. So enlightened beings can be around, like it's perfectly possible His Holiness the Dalai Lama is a Buddha. But if you don't have if you haven't created the cause to be able to see a Buddha, you just see an ordinary form of a human being. But that it doesn't mean they're not Buddhas. Everybody, like I've said before, everybody in this room could be a Buddha except me. And since I haven't created the cause to see a being in that aspect, I just see ordinary people. Nirmanakaya, this emanation body, can be anything. Buddhas, enlightened beings can emanate anything that will be useful if someone's created the cause for it.
Can I ask a quick question? So, Bubba says bodies of a Buddha, and then going through the list, sometimes it says the Buddha. So, I'm just wondering, wondering if these all apply to all Buddha, I mean,
It's all Buddhas, yeah. The 4 bodies of Buddhas. Well, I can't change it in this view. So, yeah, it's just, yeah, and usually it's kind of tricky. Like the Wish-Fulfilling Golden Sun, which is one of the readings that I emailed you, and I think this is probably from the Christian tradition, they capitalize like him, holy, you know, whenever they're referring to the Buddha, meaning Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, they'll capitalize it. But you don't have to capitalize it if you're just talking in general, enlightened beings. Buddhas, we don't, you know. But I think in Wish-Fulfilling Golden Sun they do. But I was taught as a transcriber in Chenrezig, you know, when we were taking our teachings, not to capitalize it unless you're talking about the historical Buddha. Because then it's a name, the Buddha, as opposed to, you know, a category.
A Buddha.
Yeah. So Buddhas, you know, enlightened beings, Buddhas, Sugatas. So I'm, you know, so it's really the, you know, it's an omniscient mind of Buddhas. You know.
exactly, in particular with that one, that's what I was curious.
Yeah, and I left the transliteration of the Tibetan for Nirmanakaya because you probably heard the word of tulku. That's, yeah, tulku is a recognized emanation body of a teacher. So often they'll just refer to the two, you know, they'll just say Dharmakaya and Rupakaya. Dharmakaya meaning the mind and of the Buddha and its emptiness, and the Rupakaya meaning the form bodies of the Buddha. Sometimes they refer to 3 bodies of a Buddha, and then they're just talking about the Dharmakaya, and then they actually are talking about the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya. You know, they're into list. It was an oral tradition. It was an easy way to memorize. So, but you will see these terms a lot, you know, and so I just wanted to point out what they are. And kaya just means body. Rupa means form. You know, this is a form body. This is form. You know, it's the physical, tangible aspect. So the good qualities of the form body, you know, they depict Buddha, and they talk about Buddhas having 32 marks and 80 signs, or 80 marks and signs, or, you know, I didn't do too well on the memorization part. But there are all sorts of, you know, like the hair on the Buddha all turns towards the right. Every curl turns to the right. And then the mark on the forehead. And then you'll often see, you'll have a Dharma wheel on the hands and the feet. These are called signs of a Buddha. And only, you know, high-level bodhisattvas can see these, or other Buddhas. So, like, you know, it's like, I think the, you know, the Arya bodhisattvas that are on the pure grounds perhaps can see these signs. But they all represent something. So it's not, you know, it's not about this physical body having signs. They're just, they just represent the qualities of the Buddha. Like the Buddha, like the sign on the feet, you know, it's just this idea that, you know, it's like Buddha's feet don't actually touch the ground, you know. But this is because a Buddha's everywhere. It's not like, you know, they have to walk somewhere. They could just be there, you know. So that's what makes the super emanation body so special, because, you know, the Shakyamuni Buddha displayed the deeds of a Buddha. So here it says the Buddha's whole body, his hair and nails, everything, are his mind. Even one single hair sees each and every existence. So every part of a form body is omniscient, because it's not a body like ours. It's like the mind is projecting a hologram. So it's a body that is completely manifesting from the mind. It's for us to be able to see. So it has, but it's nothing like the bodies we have. Even if it appears to us that way. It appears to us that way because we can't see anything but that. It's kind of mind-boggling. Buddhas can transform their bodies into countless different aspects according to the different levels of minds of the beings that they're helping. They can manifest as words, as bridges, as water, as anything. So this is like, when people tell stories where it was a miracle, just as blah, blah, blah happened, then suddenly, I don't know, something happened. That something that happened can be a Buddha manifesting something that prevents harm because you created the cause for it. Some meritorious thing is ripening in that moment. It's why is it that you have a plane crash and one person walks away? Which happens. It's like we had, at Katrina. I come from New Orleans, so after Katrina, one of the buses that took people to Houston, so they'd been stuck in like the Superdome for weeks, and all the stuff, and they make it through that, they get on the bus, and then there's a bus crash, they're all killed. Their lifespan was up, So, I mean, it's like, anyway, just to let you think about these things as something different than what made me think about them. And every tiny ray of light of Buddha's holy body, or any Buddha's body, there are countless Buddhas. The seed of I love this. The seed of each of these different aspects of Buddha is within the mind of each sentient being. We have what we need to become a Buddha. It's not like we have to create something new. We just need to correct our mistaken states of mind, remove our ignorance. All of our, all of our hatred, anger, greed, and all of those states of mind come from an incorrect understanding of how things exist and what brings us happiness. So when you correct those mistaken understandings, those misunderstandings, they simply can't arise. We already have the basis, all the good qualities of Buddha. We all have, moments of patience, compassion, kindness, wisdom. It's just about, and we all know we can be concentrated. It's just usually we're concentrated on the wrong thing. So it's about, and this again is why we want to keep reminding ourselves of the good qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Because we have the capacity to become that. It's not specialness. It's effort. It's directed effort. So it's just, we don't have a deadline. We'll just keep coming back till we get it. So it's, and even when we get it, it's not like we cease. It's just that we cease suffering. We don't have this kind of miserable existence. So. The good qualities of the Rupakaya are also about the speech of a Buddha. So it brings great pleasure and peace to the mind and release from greed, hatred, ignorance, and suffering. So at the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, those who were close to Shakyamuni Buddha and who were attracted to the teachings, not, averse to the teachings, all that stuff, they had a lot of merit happening, to be able to be born at that time and to be close and to be able to hear the teachings and all this kind of stuff. So it's said that some people would become enlightened just by hearing one talk, because they'd done all the work in previous lives, and now they had the merit to hear, directly from an enlightened being, the teachings, and they got it. So, one word can answer countless different questions at the same time. I mean, this is, how often do we leave teachings and we go, they were talking just to me, and everybody in the room saying that. So, hey, funny that, The good qualities of the Dharmakaya are the mind, the supreme quality of understanding, which incorporates both ultimate and relative existence. In other words, a Buddha can see how things appear to us, as well as the ultimate truth of how they actually exist. A Buddha perceives the three times simultaneously, the past, present, and future at the same time, because there is no ignorance in the mind of a Buddha. So our love and compassion is present when we see a suffering being, but a Buddha's compassion is present all the time. There is no moment when he is not constantly aware of the suffering of all beings in the different realms. That's what uncontrived compassion, great compassion is. It means without effort, it's just always there. Because that's wisdom. Let's face it. Wisdom naturally has compassion for people who are suffering. Compassion is a correct state of mind. Our compassion's mixed with our self-cherishing, so it's, not perfect. But when you remove that part, that's not a problem. You just have pure compassion. This is probably a repeat. They say that a Buddha or Buddhas are bound by their great compassion. Just in the same way we're bound to samsara by our disturbing emotions, so by our ignorance, So it's sort of like, it's not like it's a trap, it's just that omniscience, we tend to, in our society, we tend to separate wisdom from love, whereas in Buddhism, they're both correct states of mind. Now, it's not love with attachment, it's not love with self-interest, it's just the wish that others be happy. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing that has to be corrected about that state of mind. I was told by my dad at some point, if you're going to talk about your emotions, our conversation can't be rational. And I, of course, argued with that, vehemently. But that's an interesting thing we do in our culture, is we say, if you're talking about things of the heart, then forget it. You're screwed up. You can't possibly we can't say that's reasonable. The Buddha has exactly the opposite point of view. Now, it's true that samsara beings' emotions are all contaminated with ignorance, so it is kind of a mixture of things. But it's not that we have to this is where, so often you'll hear people talk about that Buddhists detach, the secret to, having a even kind of state of mind is just to detach, as if we don't care about anybody. And it's really not that. It's detaching from our self-cherishing. It's not making it about us. It's making it about everybody else. And because the compassion is impartial, there's no difference in how the Buddha will, or Buddhas will act towards, for sentient beings. They say the enlightened activities of Buddhas or the deeds of Buddhas are intuitive, completely effortless, and unremitting. Unremitting. So they never stop. Intuitive meaning they don't have to think about it. They have direct knowledge of everything in every moment. So they just manifest whatever will be of help. They help each sentient being differently. The actions benefit greatly those whose minds have been properly prepared, just as more seed can be planted in a field that has been widened. We don't have limited capacity. We have unlimited capacity. So as soon as we're ready, our good qualities can grow, and our wisdom can grow. So the good qualities of the Dharma. So basically, the avoidance of any action that creates negative karma is Dharma. And all actions that create merit are Dharma actions. But what this is getting at is all actions that lead to suffering are not Dharma. And all actions that lead to happiness are Dharma. Now, learning what that is doesn't come naturally to us. This is what we have to learn. What is it we need to abandon? Right now we think that our self-interest makes sense. That it's necessary for survival. So we have to unlearn that. We need to understand that actually, caring about everybody else is how we best serve ourselves. That's the path to happiness. So if we want to be happy, it's sort of like His Holiness says, we need to be selfishly enlightened, If you want to be selfish, be wise in your selfishness, cherish others. Because that's what's going to bring you to happiness. Our method of acting from self-interest does not succeed that way. It ends up with just more suffering. And this is why so often, people will often ask questions, well, what would be the right thing to do, or would this be right, or would that? It always comes down to it depends. And only Buddhas really know. Bodhisattvas, high level of bodhisattvas, if they're thinking about you, they know they can see your past lives, and then they can be pretty skillful. But if you can't do that, then you're guessing. Now, it might be an educated guess, but it's still a guess.
So for me, this is always the trick, is this discernment.
Yeah. Basically, you can just trust that you don't know until you're a Buddha.
Well, that may not be all helpful in a practical matter sometimes,
Well, yeah, it is, because basically we can quit worrying about it.
Well,
we do make the best decisions we can and let go of the outcome.
Got it.
Because we don't know.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, we get ourselves all twisted into knots because we really think we ought to be able to make the perfect decision. And that's pride, and it's also it's just incorrect. It's not true. But it's hard to really get that. It doesn't mean we don't try to do our best. It doesn't mean it doesn't matter what we do or what we say. What it means is we have to let go of thinking there's a right answer that we can come up with. We don't have enough knowledge to do that.
Yeah, and in particular for me, where I really know I don't have enough knowledge is like with boundaries, as we call them. When a request is made or seems as a certain action wants to be taken, and I don't know if that's really good for me.
Well, that's your first mistake.
Right. Well,
if it's good for if that's where you're thinking, you're already on the wrong foot. I'm not kidding. This is the deal, and this is very, very hard. It's basically the way you find out if you've gone too far. If you've overextended. Is when you've done an action and you resent it, or you're angry about it. And that's when you know you've stretched too far. you know? It is because it has nothing to do with you. This idea, oh, well, I'll be too tired,
Well,
so.
Well, if it were that easy, that's not,
Yeah.
those type of things are not a problem. So, to be maybe a little more specific, it's like, so I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
You know, and I've helped in a certain way or taken a certain action, and there've been consequences which not helpful, not healthy for me, not good, you know. And
But how do you know that?
because I can feel it,
Because you don't like it.
right?
And why is that necessarily bad?
Because it's well, okay, I get it, it's attachment, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Suffering.
This is analytical meditation.
Right,
This is why we always have to go, why? And then go, why? You know, and it isn't that we have to necessarily change our decision about what to do.
mm-hmm.
It's that we need to be honest about why we're making that decision. You know, it's like, I would really like to be one of those nuns who can live without health insurance, because I can't afford a health insurance. I just don't like having to pay for it. But I just can't bear it. The fear of getting in a wreck and then not having, you know, the means to pay the bills is something that just causes me incredible fear.
I can give you some of that. I don't fear not paying my bills.
Well, there you go. But, you know, so that's just, I mean, this is just the, you know, this is just the habit that I was born with, and I was raised by someone who really thought the same thing. So I've been conditioned that way, all right? So we need to know our limits, you know, and we can only learn our limits by testing them. And so sometimes we test them and realize, oh, yep, not going to do that again. Because we become, like, I can become enraged when I'm afraid, you know. And so I know that's just too far of a stretch for me. You know.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
But okay, so if it's at that kind of extreme, then you kind of know, okay, I've tested this limit, I need to pull back. But you can only know by doing it.
Right.
Yeah. And so sometimes we realize, oh, I'm not stretching myself enough. You know, like, life's pretty easy. Oh, well, maybe that's a clue that you're not stretching yourself to try, you know, you're not pushing the envelope, you know, and so you have to push the envelope. And then you regroup. And slowly, slowly you discover that, you know, it really is very flexible. We really can, and there are some cases that we can stretch really pretty far. This is one of those things, like if we're attached to someone, we can go pretty far in our help for them. You know, we're willing to do quite a bit that we wouldn't do for the stranger off the street. So we know that our capacity is bigger than we like to think when we're faced with a stranger on the street. You know, that's our self-interest getting in the way. It doesn't mean our decision about to help or not help has to change. It's just really being aware. You know, of course the people we can benefit the most are the people around us. And they're perfectly suitable people to benefit. We don't have to go far and wide to look for people to serve. You know? If everybody took care of their own little community, the whole world would be better. There's not a problem with that. It's that we want to keep expanding the mind, recognizing that the only reason I'm willing to take care of this person more than the stranger on the street is because of my perception of whether they help me or, you know, and that is a meaningless separation. And that's something we're trying to let go of. We're not trying to let go of helping people around us. We're just trying to let go of this thing that somehow my friends deserve my help and my, you know, strangers don't. Because that's not true. That's an incorrect assumption. But there's no magical, it's just the more we practice, the more we develop our wisdom, the more we will have that wisdom to draw upon to know when we can stretch and when we, not yet. And we have to test ourselves. Not like it's a test, but just you want to get up against those limits to see where you are. And then sometimes when we think, I really resent this, then we can look at whether we really stretched ourselves too far or we're just responding with our habit energy, and really look, really, is it, are you, is your, what's underneath that anger? Maybe they haven't taken advantage of me. Maybe I'm just really tired. Or I'm not good at this particular kind of help, so I'm uncomfortable. And so I'm even more, just makes me feel uncertain. And I don't like that, so I tend to respond with anger, because that's my go-to line, whatever. And people have different ones. Some people, go, oh, I'm just not good enough, and they go to that place, I said, they're not good enough, and I go to that place. So, none of these are healthy. But we just have to have this honest, keep searching for what's underneath that, till we find it. And then we either discover, I need to work on this, but I can't expend my energy right now on that, or, I can work on this a little bit. That was okay, So, does that make any sense?
No.
Is it gobbledygook? So any methods free of negative mind are Dharma methods, no matter how different they appear. Any method stained with greed for temporal or worldly life concerns, comfort, ignorance of the evolution of karma, or hatred is not a Dharma method, no matter how it looks. This is getting at, we can't judge other people's actions because we don't know what's in their mind. A Buddha's actions may look totally wrong to us, and it's fine to make the decision, oh, I'm not going to do that action. But to judge the person doing it is faulty because you don't know why they're doing it. They may be enlightened and know exactly what they're doing. But this is also why we don't do, it's like, Mom, would you jump off a cliff if everybody else jumped off a cliff? So we don't imitate all actions just because, oh, so-and-so did it, We have to use our inner wisdom. Because until we're a Buddha, we really kind of don't know what we're doing. So, and that's okay. Recognizing that, being comfortable with that is part of how we get there. Really knowing where we are, and then cultivating our wisdom, all of these things, that will help us get there. Not trying to do things we're not ready to do. That just can hit us in the face, and we retreat, we give up. Questions? Thoughts? Yes?
This makes too much sense, I just want to say, because you said before, this makes sense, makes too much sense. I just want to say that.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I know, listen, I'm there, right there with you, you in the morning, you kind of, I do my prayers, I do my commitments, all this kind of stuff, and I'll read some teaching or look at some teaching, and yes, and then, I stub my toe on the way out the door, and then it's, like, I'm sorry. I'm exaggerating a little bit. But this is how, this is because we're not stable yet. But the only way to get stable is to keep practicing. Not go, oh, you're never going to get it. That's incorrect view according to the teachings. We can get it. Probably not at the pace we desire, but that's our self-care. I don't want to suffer anymore now. So please, may I be a Buddha tonight? You know, that'd be nice, but that's not how it works, or otherwise we'd all be there. It'd be just, you know, chilling in bliss instead of this. If it fights the negative minds of greed, ignorance, and hatred, it is dharma action. If it only helps to gain worldly happiness, it's a negative action. And in particular, this life happiness. You know, the goal is only to make yourself wealthier, you know, whatever, more famous, whatever, in this life. That's not getting you anywhere. And this is where we try to correct our motivation all the time. You know, we kind of go back, why am I doing this? And try to tweak it so that it is for the benefit of others. You know, it's like I had a conversation with someone yesterday about, you know, say you're a musician and you know, you want to be successful and you want to be the best musician ever and da-da-da-da-da. You know, does that necessarily make it a wrong motivation? You have to look at their minds. If they're thinking, I've been born with this gift of creating beautiful music, and I want to share it with the world, you know, and the more famous I get, the more people who will hear it, that's not a negative motivation. You know, so we can't assume that people are coming from a selfish place. And it also is a way of us learning how to reframe why we're doing things. You know, to remember, oh yes, you're raising your kids and trying to get them to understand the importance of school, importance of skills, and da 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 da. That you want them not to have to move back home when they're 30. So you know all of these things. But if you can get underneath that and go, well, I'm doing it because I want them to, you know, have the things they need in life, to, you know, because life is easier if you have a good job and good income and, you know, a good partner, all that kind of stuff. You know, if you're doing it, you know, and sometimes we just have to tweak it. We just need to recognize, ooh, I'm letting my self-interest creep in here, and that I don't want to do. Let me bring it back to what I think will really help them have happiness. You know, that's the place we need to try to find, because it's there. That's our Buddha nature. So it's there. We just want to nurture it and not nurture the other stuff. You know, so it's just about looking. And so when you're looking, then you kind of go, well, it's for this reason and this reason. You know, when we realize one of those reasons is not really helping us develop the mind we want to kind of abandon that thought process and lean towards the one that's more skillful. And this just takes practice. And it takes not assuming you're there. So, you know, you just have to always look. And you look again. And whenever you have that little feeling of, check to see if your self-interest has been hurt, you know, so that you can clean it up. Again, doesn't mean you do anything differently. It's that you're correcting your mind. That's where progress is really made. As there may be no difference in appearance between an action performed with deluded mind arising from worldly concerns and one performed with pure mind in accordance with Dharma, we cannot judge the actions of others from external appearances. This kind of advice comes up in the teachings again and again and again, which, you know, like is no surprise to me with my judgmental mind. So, you know, it's just this reminder that the purpose of practice is not to assess how others are doing. And that we can't even do that until we can read their minds. So the 10 virtues are also relative Dharma jewels because they protect us from future suffering. the intention not to kill, and so forth, and prevent us from taking life, prevent us from creating the causes of future suffering. So by learning the teachings, this is another way, the Dharma is worthy of refuge, is it teaches us what to abandon and what to adopt. And even if in the beginning, the reason why we're abandoning them is because we don't want to suffer anymore, that can, slowly, that can, if you practice, can become, I don't want to do any harm. I want only to benefit. Fully completing the true cessation of suffering and the path of realizing shunyata, or emptiness, brings enlightenment, omniscience, and this is the knowledge of Dharma. So this is why the Dharma is considered the true refuge, is because it is the method. It is how we can actualize Buddhahood. So they say, hence a Buddha himself is also the Dharma jewel and the Sangha jewel. This is that chicken and egg thing. Dharma creates Buddhas, and then Buddhas teach the Dharma. So, this gives credence to this idea of time is not really linear, but, we have to go with what we know. So, I watched Nova last night on quantum, what's that word, entanglement. Oh, God. It's over my pay grade. So, but it was fun. Good qualities of the Arya Sangha. So what's an Arya Sangha?
Noble Sangha.
What does that mean? Yes, that's correct. That's the English translation. For those of you who probably know.
Somebody who has a direct realization of emptiness.
Right. So they've realized emptiness directly, and makes them, so those are beings with realizations. So they're no longer under the control of ignorance. So this is a quality we can't know about someone until we also have this quality. But that's, so this is the idea. We're trying to remember the qualities of what we're aspiring towards. So all at this point we can know is the teachings. This is what the teachings say, So, but eventually, if we keep practicing, if the teachings are correct, we will have these realizations, and then we will know. It won't just be logical. Because to me, it's logical. But like I've said, I have to go backwards. If someone's omniscient, what qualities would they have to have developed? And then, and keep going back and back and back. So all noble beings having true Dharma knowledge, the perception of the ultimate truth, that's emptiness of all existence. This really should be, I can't change it here. Okay, having removed all delusion are Sangha. So that's the true Sangha jewel, or Arya beings. And they've attained the path of seeing, which is a true path, which means it leads to true cessation. When you look at the Four Noble Truths, the truth of suffering, truth of the cause of suffering, truth of cessation of suffering, and truth of the path out of suffering. When you attain the path of seeing, because that means you've seen directly how things actually exist. Which means you've experienced that. Obviously, it's not an eyesight thing. When you have that direct perception of emptiness, you abandon all of the acquired, meaning that the afflictions that arise from what we've learned in that life. So from our tenet system. We attain the first true cessation, which is that cessation of those acquired afflictive states. And we enter the first bodhisattva ground. So you become a bodhisattva when you enter the Mahayana path of accumulation. That means you've generated uncontrived bodhicitta. But to then enter the grounds or the bhumis of bodhisattvas means you're an Arya being. You've now realized emptiness. So that's at the path of seeing. So Arya Bodhisattvas and Arhats can only perceive ultimate truth in meditative equipoise on emptiness. It is the only unmistaken mind in the mind of a sentient being. All other minds in the minds of sentient beings are mistaken due to their ignorance or their imprints of ignorance. So even bodhisattvas in the pure lands, pure grounds, who are liberated from samsara due to the imprints that are obscurations to omniscience, they still see the appearance of inherent existence. So their minds are still mistaken. They're not wrong, but they're mistaken. You know, the appearance of things is still mistaken. They don't fall for it. They know it's a falsity. But Buddhas can experience both at the same time. They know, they experience what we see because we're experiencing it. But they can see the ultimate truth of all things. All the time, every moment. We're not going to go through this. So relative truth or conventional truth is how all objects of knowledge appear to exist to ordinary minds, to us, if you are who you appear to be, because they're being obscured by ignorance. So ultimate truth is how things actually exist is that they're empty of inherent existence, even though that's how it appears to ordinary beings. So it's not that things that exist change from when you're an ordinary being to when you have a direct realization of emptiness. They haven't changed at all. Our understanding of them has changed. It's our mind that changes, not the objects that exist. They never existed that way in the first place. So we're removing a completely wrong understanding of how things exist. They never existed that way. So, and we go into this topic again and again, more and more, and then finally it's one of the last topics we go in. It's one of the last modules. So these are the consequences of having directly realized emptiness, is you can start emanating bodies to help others. They can see into hundreds of eons. They can start to see what's happened. They can travel between hundreds of worlds, ripen hundreds of sentient beings. You ripen a sentient being by bringing them to the Dharma. So like they say, carrying like an insect around a stupa is creating the cause for them to meet the teachings in the future. Blessing animals, that's why we do the animal blessing. All of those things it's an opportunity for them to have merit that leads to the Dharma, because you're using Dharma tools. When you get to the second ground, everything's exponential. Now they can emanate 1,000 bodies, and so on. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Because a Buddha can emanate countless bodies or things. So this is sort of in summary, why are the three jewels valid refuges? The Buddha is free from ignorance, free from every fault, and possesses every good quality. The Dharma is the enlightened speech of the Buddha, providing the correct and complete instructions to eliminate suffering. It is the actual refuge. The Sangha is the embodiment of successful practice of the instructions, modeling and assisting beginners on implementing the teachings. So we've already discussed what and I think we discussed this. We start with this just desire to have, another good rebirth. So that's sort of the beginner motivation for going for refuge, is it will teach us the way to create the causes and conditions to have another good rebirth. And if we keep doing that, we'll finally kind of get with it and realize, I want out of samsara. And we'll really go for refuge to try to be liberated from samsara. And then finally, you know, we know that that's not enough. We want to get everybody out of samsara, so we go for refuge to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so some people, you know, are already ready to be, you know, they say the teachers often talk about how the people in their country or something are just wanting good rebirth, so they give a lot of resources to the monasteries. Please practice, you know, and make sure I have a good rebirth. So, you know, and generosity is one of the practices that helps with resources in the future. You know, you also have to practice ethics, so you can't like go rob a bank and then give that money and end up with a good human rebirth. It doesn't work that way. So. So there are benefits of taking refuge. I'm not seeing the slide I want to see. I'm going to find it. Because the reason why Buddhas can emanate as many things as possible, why Arya Bodhisattvas can start emanating, is because their bodies are made, they call it a light, you know, they talk about light bodies. But what it really, you know, it's this idea that once you have overcome being bound by a samsaric body, and that's through the mind, it's by removing your ignorance. Now your mind can manifest whatever you want it to manifest. And this gets back to this idea that everything we're experiencing, everything that we see is a manifestation of our karma. When you're, and it's, you know, when you're no longer bound to that kind of, you know, storyline, you know, you can use the physical, what would you call it, laws of the universe or whatever, to manifest whatever you want, to be of help. I mean, you know, that's the only thing that motivates you, is to help others. So you're not like limited to what you can build or what you can just manifest it. And you can do it, you know, without effort. This is very hard to believe. So, until you do things like watch quantum entanglements. And then you kind of think, yeah, what I see isn't what reality is at all. So, you know, I mean, this is the thing, is that we've been raised very much to think, you know, seeing is believing, you know. But the more we learn, the more we realize, well, that's not true. You know, eyewitnesses never see the same thing. So, you know, even if we're not, you know, looking at the whole universal cosmos thing, you know, just even in ordinary life, we're often wrong. So it's really not that much of a stretch to imagine that perhaps we're getting it wrong to begin with. So, but understanding how it actually exists takes a lot of wisdom. And that takes a lot of merit. Because our self-interest clouds our ability to develop wisdom. You know, you think that self-cherishing is, or self-centeredness is the very first thing to arise after grasping at a self. And if what we need to counter is that grasping at a self, that self-centeredness is in the way. and that's why we have to keep working at noticing when it's present and creating merit in order to create the cause to not be obscured by that ignorance. So this is why there are a lot of practices that are about accumulating merit. One of the main practices for being able to generate wisdom is meditating on emptiness. So it's not like, you know, you have to have a lot of money for that. But But you do have to have some teachings for that. You have to study. So, and meditating, they say meditating on the mind of bodhicitta, really wanting to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, also removes obstacles. And you can see why, because that directly opposes the mind of self-centeredness. And since it's a major obstacle to wisdom arising, you are, meditating on that mind will help. So a lot of people, I hear this often, they'll say, well, I can't do that. I can't really think of, I can't honestly say I really want to benefit all sentient beings. There are people I don't like. But you really want to start there anyway. You really want to keep countering your lack of equanimity, the way we parse people into groups. We want to keep trying to counter that, and we want to keep it in mind that what we really are trying to go for is great compassion, the highest intention, really wanting to become enlightened for the benefit of all beings, not just to get ourselves out of suffering. That's how we'll get there, is just keeping the possibility that it's doable helps us get there. The mind that says it's impossible is an obstacle. What do you think?
I think that sounds like it makes some sense.
How doable does it sound?
Oh, hard.
Sounds doable.
It takes a lot of
Sounds
focus, doesn't
doable.
it?
It definitely sounds doable. It's how much practice.
Yeah, it's all about practice. And that's, so like I know for myself, I have to overcome laziness. So that I don't just plod through the day. I actually go, okay, set an intention. Remember your motivation. Adjust your motivation. Yeah.
I think striving is strong, right? So, we're talking about it, right? And then in my mind, it's like, all right, I gotta do this, right? I don't like those words, I have to, I gotta, right? So, I don't know, what came to my mind was like the Buddha just went under a tree and started meditating, right? Then he started seeing so many things. So I think the meditation part is like when it becomes, because that's who we are, I think. Innately, I think, some of the things you're saying, I think, we're generally good people. I think everyone does.
That's our Buddha nature.
Yeah. So I think, for me anyway, I'm just hearing like striving, and I'm like, that's not gonna work. Like, for me, it's not gonna work.
And who's that about?
Me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Right. So that's what you were saying, and I've been hearing that all along.
Yeah.
So it's no mistake that I had to say that.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
There you go.
This is what we do. I mean, you're not unusual. This is exactly what we do. Oh, that won't work for me because I'm already Buddha and I know. But this is what we do.
Right.
So we have to look for that. This is why we keep asking why. We look at what we're thinking and then we go, why am I thinking that? And usually we'll come up with self-cherishing. I mean, underneath it all, if it's not a skillful thing, you're going to find self-cherishing. Or the 8 worldly concerns, which are just a way of feeding self-cherishing. So this is the thing. So we need to develop the understanding of the harm of self-cherishing. So that when it arises, we're not patient with it. Where we go, that's the problem. And really work at stretching that limit, of going, like basically you can do things like whenever it's self-cherishing, like whenever I don't want to do something because of self-cherishing, then I'm just going to do it. So you can work with it, so you can just, yeah.
So
I don't want to do that.
No, how do you develop like the patience then? I think that's what I'm hearing too now.
You don't
The
need patience with self-cherishing.
Well, just the patience in general, just to be able to
you have to work on self-cherishing.
Right.
I mean, it all comes back to that. You know, when you look at the reason why they teach generosity first in the 6 perfections for bodhisattvas is that one of the obstacles to everything is our attachment to our possessions. You know, we think we need them, you know, and won't be happy without them. So by giving them away, you know, with wisdom, we do need possessions, you know, but that helps us loosen this attachment to them, thinking that our state of mind depends on whether or not we have them. This helps us with the next practice of ethics. It's very hard to be ethical when your self-interest is in the way. We don't see things the same way. So until we've given up some of our attachment to what we see as mine, it's very hard to be ethical. Then ethical is this desire to do no harm at all. When it comes, you know, the basic thing about ethics is to, you know, not do any harm. That leads to patience. Because patience is the mind that accepts the suffering being done to you. The harm that, you know, the suffering that arises in the mind when you perceive you're being harmed and not wanting to retaliate. You know, so it's a holding back of that self-interested motivation because you don't want to do any harm. Because you're trying to overcome that self-centered mind and only think of others.
Dharma, holding back.
Yeah, that's what Dharma means, holding back.
Or letting go.
So this is, so it's sort of that process. We have to recognize that impatience is generally coming, not generally, it's coming from self-interest. You know, it's getting in our way in some form, you know. Now, because we're not living in a war zone. You know, I think I've told some of you about how one of my teachers in Australia was talking about patience and developing patience and da-da-da-da. And he goes, you know, of course, the first part of patience is somebody has to be harming you. You know, you don't use patience unless someone's trying to harm you. And he goes, and when was the last time someone was trying to harm you? You know, we get impatient over, you know, the red light. Oh my goodness, I know that red light's thinking, I want to harm you. You know, this is how out of control we are with our self-interest, because we have it so good.
So like the ignorance, right? So like, you know, it's important to be around people that aren't, I mean, listen, I'm totally ignorant. And some people that I come across are ignorant in a different way than I'm ignorant.
Yeah.
So that collides, right? So it's like, all right, I'm ignorant here, you're ignorant there, we're just not kind of, you know, coming together. But I think it's important to be around people that are aware,
When
or try to.
That's what
practice.
Sangha's about.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that it's helpful to be around people who are practicing in the same way you are practicing, or trying to practice, so that you can be supported by that. And it's just like, you know, the alcoholic doesn't hang out with their drinking buddies, at least for a very long time, you know, because it's too hard. You know, we don't hang out with people who completely oppose our point of view because it's too hard. We haven't learned how to be patient and to be, you know, to have compassion arise and understand they don't have any of the tools that we're trying to develop to help ourselves get out of suffering, you know. So the healthy response is to feel compassion for those who don't have those tools. But if we're not there yet, we don't want to hang out with that because it will damage our practice. So we need to, you know, be supportive to our practice. And then we have to recognize that if we can never spend time with someone who thinks differently, we're not working on our patience. We're not working on our compassion. We're, you know, and we have to stretch ourselves a little, like family. You know, Most of us don't come from Buddhist families. So we have to, we can just say, I'm sorry, I can't see you for 5 years, and sometimes that might be appropriate, but probably not most of the time. So, we have to figure it out. But this is, so those are our opportunities to practice because we want them in our lives, so we have some self-interest to help us, want to try to figure it out. So, but it's, yeah, go ahead, jump in there.
But so then, what comes to my head too is then the karma, right? So it's like, certain people, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this.
Mhm.
I came to the karma classes, but I missed a few. So,
You mean you haven't realized karma yet? Okay.
so the karma thing, right? So like in my mind, I guess, my mind, right? That's a problem anyway. But, certain people have like a certain karmic path, I guess, right?
No,
No?
it's not fate.
Okay, that's where my mistake is.
Yeah, so karma, first of all, the word karma just means action, okay? When we're talking about the law of cause and effect, because that's what we also call karma, then we're talking about that what's ripening for us, what things we're experiencing out here is the results of our past actions, okay? But in every moment, we can choose how we respond. And mostly, we're out of control due to our habits, so we just respond in the same old way, and so then we're just creating the cause to repeat this experience again and again, so, but it's not that they're on some different karmic path, they're probably not on a path. None of us, if we're still stuck in samsara, and we're not bodhisattvas yet, and we're not, Arya bodhisattvas, then we are mostly operating on habit energy. And that's what we're trying to overcome. We want to notice, ooh, I'm acting out of my self-cherishing. I'm acting out of, from that place, I'm going to get angry, and all this kind of stuff. And we're trying to interrupt that so that we can change our responses so that we can not have that experience again, So it's a process. So this idea that, some people are just on a different karmic path, no, they just have different karmic things ripening than you do, or they're responding to them differently than you do, so it's not about fate, it's just about, we meet the experience, we create everything that we experience, we created the cause for, and that's true of everybody.
What's holding it together? Like certain things I see, where I'm like, wait a minute, it's just totally working, I guess. Maybe I don't know fully, obviously, but.
What do you
I
mean
just-
by that? What do you mean
Yeah,
by?
so I just see like a synergy with certain,
Well, some things you have good karma about.
Yeah.
Some things work out, because you haven't done just bad deeds since beginningless time.
You mean with people or?
yeah, just people in general, like synergy for myself or synergy in like.
It's just
certain-
karmic connections.
Right. That's the karma that I.
Have you ever met people that you just don't like on sight? They're just not, they don't suit you. That's karma. And then other people you see and go, got to have that, that's karma. It has nothing to do with the qualities of the person. Nothing whatsoever.
One quick other thing, I know, so.
Yeah, quick.
With relationships, like sometimes you see like a mirror, right? Like, so I feel like sometimes I attract the same.
That's
Karma.
habit.
It's what?
It's habit. You're creating the cause again and again and again to have the same thing happen again
To
and
break
again
out-
and again.
So it's a cycle
Yeah,
you break out of, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
yeah, I know.
You know,
I've been there,
oh, it's an
again and again and again.
They're
This-
bad relationships.
And the good ones.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah, you
also
like
create
the
causes
crazy
for good
ones.
relationships. Many of us have not.
Well, we don't notice.
Mm.
Sometimes we just don't notice.
That's not creating the cause.
So that we actually have good relationships that repeat over and over as well as the bad ones.
Those are the ones that you don't pay attention to.
Yeah, we don't pay attention to good ones, exactly.
Mhm, that's
And so-
karma.
Yeah,
Yep, that's because we don't have a lot of wisdom.
right.
That's the deal. So it's all, it isn't somebody waving a wand, having things happen to us. We've created the cause for it. And there's no reason to feel like, I must have been a terrible person because so many things don't work in my life. It's not about that. It's about, okay, there are causes for this, and if I really try to understand them, I can quit creating those causes, so I don't have to experience this. And that takes a lot, and that takes going for refuge. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm going to turn to the teachings. I'm going to follow those people who know better than I do, instead of following my instincts, which haven't worked out so well, you know? It's not that we don't have any wisdom, but we don't really have a skillful method to go in the direction we all really want to go in, which is happiness. We tend to chase after things that are just going to result in suffering, like giving in to craving. You know? And that's, you know, that's what we do. But we can change it. We don't have to keep doing it forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And if we don't make the effort, it will not change. It's not like the Buddhists can ever just say, oh, finally, we've just got to, you know, we have to intervene now because, you know, samsara's going to last forever. Unfortunately, they would have already done that for us if they could do it for one person. You know, this isn't a test. It's not like, I'm sorry, but you haven't done enough yet for me to come in and, you know, fix you. They can't fix us. So, nobody fixed them. It's not magic. It's not that they're special beings. It's just that they've done the work. And we have all the things we need to do the same thing. We're not missing any quality. So that's good news. If we overcome our laziness and our ignorance, but we can do it. Just not super fast. So,
Few eons.
few eons. You know, but that doesn't matter. You know, there is no deadline. We just want to keep going in the right direction so we can get out. You know, it's just a huge labyrinth. Anyway. All right. So this is why I said I really think it's important. Like if you're trying to think about refuge, or just what it means, if you're trying to understand what it means, is to really look at what attracts you to these teachings. And that's what you can go for refuge. You know, it's those qualities that draw you. So we want to nourish those, and we want to keep reminding ourselves of those, so that even when we're not having a great day, we still are putting forth some effort to create the cause for happiness. So the more we personalize it, by really noticing those things that resonate with us, and then using that to our advantage, that can help us. We need to develop enthusiasm and aspiration. And the way we do that is by really trusting that spots that, you know, that move our heart. You know, so we read teachings or we hear a teaching and something moves our heart. So we really want to not forget those bits. So when we're feeling discouraged or tired, we can bring them to mind to refresh us. When we have doubts, we need to remember the teachings and say we have everything we need. We don't have to start from scratch. do need to counter our unskillful habits of mind. And we need to nourish our positive habits of mind. And we need to study the teachings to figure out which is which. We need to value our own happiness. Our desire for happiness, so that we will aspire to create the causes so that we have that result. And then we just want to wish that for everybody else. And over time, if we continue with our practice, and if the teachings resonate with us, our refuge gets stronger. It changes over time because it has a stronger foundation, more faith of conviction. Because we see the changes that we can bring about in ourselves. So take a moment to rejoice in your efforts this evening, to try to understand the teachings. Try to remember the motivation you have. And feel good about that. And then just make the wish that whatever positive results may occur due to these efforts, that they don't exhaust until there are no suffering sentient beings at all. So thank you. I know it's early. I'm falling asleep up here.
I'm-
It was a great class, thank
Mm.
you.
Thank you very much.